Ever wondered if there's a place where happiness means more than money? In Bhutan, a tiny kingdom tucked away in the Himalayas, life is measured by something called gross national happiness. While the rest of the world's chasing after economic growth, Bhutan's doing the opposite, embracing cultural and geographical isolation as a way to protect its traditions. It's the only carbon-negative country on Earth where respect for nature runs so deep that even climbing its sacred mountains is off limits. But does this model really work? How does a place so closed off from the world manage to balance modernity and spirituality without losing its soul? Let's dive into what makes Bhutan one of the most fascinating and mysterious countries out there, where the past and present come together in almost magical ways. Bhutan, nestled in the Himalayas, feels like a secret kept by nature itself. With tricky access and limited communication, this tiny kingdom has chosen to preserve its essence by staying away from outside influences. The isolation isn't by accident, it's a deliberate policy designed to protect its independence and Bhutanese culture. By keeping the world at arm's length, Bhutan has managed to preserve its rich and unique culture. The cultural isolation has allowed tourism in Bhutan to be carefully controlled, limiting the number of visitors and ensuring that each experience is authentic and respectful. Picture a traveler winding down a dirt road, suddenly spotting a solitary monastery perched atop a hill, surrounded by prayer flags fluttering in the wind. Limited communication plays a big role too. By restricting exposure to outside cultures, Bhutan has kept its age-old traditions and religious practices, like Himalayan Buddhism, very much alive. It's a delicate balance between past and present, where modernity moves forward slowly, without trampling over the old ways. The Bhutanese seem to have found a way to thrive without fully opening up to the world. This is also evident in their sustainable development policies, which place happiness and well-being above economic growth at any cost. While many countries rush towards progress, Bhutan moves at its own pace, cherishing its cultural and spiritual heritage. But even in this isolation, there are signs of change. Small steps like the introduction of the internet and television are beginning to connect the country to the outside world. But Bhutan remains vigilant, aware that it's possible to modernize without losing its soul. The transition to the next topic will reveal how this philosophy translates into the practice of gross national happiness. In Bhutan, success is measured by gross national happiness, an approach that values well-being above all else. This unusual concept is built around 4 pillars that guide life in the country: sustainable development, environmental conservation, cultural preservation, and good governance. It's not just about having, it's about being and feeling. The focus on well-being means that public policies prioritize what really matters to the people. For example, Bhutan's free healthcare and education are basic rights that ensure a dignified life, while Buddhist practices like meditation and mindfulness are encouraged to promote a spiritual lifestyle. It's all about cultivating a sense of happiness that goes beyond materialism. Every government decision is filtered through its impact on the collective well-being, from preserving the Himalayas to managing tourism in Bhutan. Visitors are encouraged to connect with nature and local culture by engaging in activities like trekking in remote villages or visiting Bhutan's monasteries. This way, tourism becomes a cultural immersion, not just sightseeing. While the world chases rapid economic growth, Bhutan reminds us that true development can't be measured by numbers alone. The country shows that happiness and well-being are legitimate goals that can and should guide entire nations. It's a unique way to look at progress, where the question isn't how much did we earn, but are we happy? This model continues to inspire international debates about quality of life and sustainability. And as we move forward, it's clear that the principles of gross national happiness are deeply rooted in Bhutanese identity, leading to the next crucial question: how does Bhutan uphold this philosophy while being the world's first carbon-negative country? In Bhutan, sustainability isn't just a goal, it's a way of life. The country achieves something rare and admirable, being the world's first carbon-negative nation. This means it absorbs more carbon dioxide than it emits, thanks to the dense forests covering over 70% of its land. The Himalayan mountains don't just frame the landscape, they help preserve this environmental balance. To promote a healthy and sustainable lifestyle, the government takes bold steps like banning the sale and production of tobacco. In Bhutan, practices like organic farming and the use of hydropower are the norm. These actions reflect a genuine dedication to environmental conservation, where every policy is crafted to protect both the environment and future generations' well-being. Tourism policies reflect this philosophy too. Visitors are encouraged to explore the country in a sustainable way, focusing on nature and rural life in Bhutan. This means trekking through remote trails and experiencing life in traditional villages, allowing a real connection with Bhutanese culture and sustainability. Here, every step on a trail is a way of honoring the surrounding environment. This commitment to sustainable development is mirrored in Bhutanese daily life, where conscious use of resources and protection of local wildlife are highly valued. Even buildings follow traditional architecture that blends with the natural landscape, minimizing environmental impact. Bhutanese traditions show it's possible to evolve without harming the planet, maintaining a spiritual lifestyle in harmony with nature. Looking to the future, Bhutan teaches the world that development must be as sustainable as it is inclusive. And that brings us to the next point, the history of the country's opening and modernization, where it began to connect with the world gradually without losing its essence. Bhutan started opening its doors to the world in the 1960s, but cautiously and in a controlled manner. Before that, geographical and cultural isolation was nearly absolute, with little outside influence. The change was gradual, beginning with the limited entry of tourists in 1974, as a way to expose the country to the world without compromising its identity. Modernization brought with it television and the internet only in 1999, making Bhutan one of the last countries to connect with the digital age. This step was taken carefully, so that Bhutanese traditions and the spiritual way of life wouldn't be overshadowed by information overload and consumerism. Even today, modernization moves at a balanced pace, with deep respect for local culture. Despite opening up, tourism policies in Bhutan remain quite restrictive. While the country is accessible to visitors, the experience is controlled to ensure minimal cultural and environmental impact. Travelers can explore remote monasteries and untouched landscapes, but always with an eye toward conservation and respect for local traditions. The transition to a constitutional monarchy in 2008 symbolized Bhutan's desire to blend the best of both worlds, modernity and tradition. This change allowed the country to adapt to modern times without losing its essence, balancing modern governance with traditional values. However, development has been carefully guided to keep the focus on gross national happiness and sustainability. This controlled opening continues to shape Bhutan's identity, offering a unique example of how a country can connect to the world without losing its roots. And as we move to the next topic, we'll see how Buddhism remains the spiritual anchor that supports this modernization process. In Bhutan, Himalayan Buddhism is more than just a religion, it's the backbone of culture and daily life. Every corner of the country is marked by monasteries and temples, where prayer flags flutter in the wind, spreading blessings to all beings. Spiritual practice is deeply rooted in Bhutanese traditions, influencing everything from traditional architecture to government policies. Meditation and other spiritual practices are part of everyday life, both in villages and urban areas. For many, this spirituality is a way of life that helps keep the focus on happiness and well-being, rather than getting caught up in materialism. It's not uncommon to see monks performing rituals or ordinary Bhutanese people participating in ceremonies at sacred sites, reinforcing a deep connection with the divine. Buddhism's influence extends to education in Bhutan, where values of compassion and respect for nature are taught from an early age. Kids learn about the importance of environmental conservation, not just as policy, but as a spiritual practice. This creates a generation that's conscious of sustainable development principles and the sacred role nature plays in the country's life. This spiritual presence is especially noticeable during cultural events, like religious festivals that bring entire communities together to celebrate with traditional dances and chants. Religion isn't separated from daily life, it's woven into it, giving Bhutan a sense of unity and purpose. People live spirituality day by day, not just on special occasions. As the country modernizes, Buddhism remains an anchor that upholds local values and practices. And as society changes, the transition to a constitutional monarchy reflects an ongoing effort to balance tradition and progress, something we'll explore in the next topic. In 2008, Bhutan took a significant step by transitioning from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. This shift marked the start of a new era, where tradition and modernity began walking hand in hand. Although the king remains a central figure, power has been shared with the parliament, symbolizing the country's commitment to good governance and public participation. The transition was handled with the same care that characterizes Bhutan's other policies. The monarchy in Bhutan has remained deeply respected, and traditional values continue to guide the government. Policies focused on gross national happiness and sustainability have stayed in place, reinforcing the idea that progress needs to happen without compromising the country's cultural essence. Under this new form of governance, decisions are made considering not only the people's interests but also the impact on the environment and cultural traditions. For example, tourism and environmental conservation policies still reflect this balanced approach, ensuring sustainable socio-economic development is a reality for all. This shows that Bhutan values the collective above all else. The constitutional monarchy brought controlled modernization without losing the holistic view of well-being that the country adopts. It's as if Bhutan has found its own path, where innovation is welcome, but respect for the past is never left behind. This mix of tradition and modernity gives the country a unique character that inspires other nations to consider alternative forms of governance. With stronger democratic institutions, Bhutan keeps focusing on preserving its culture and environment while moving forward. This is even reflected in bans that reinforce the reverence for nature, as we'll see next, exploring the restrictions on climbing sacred mountains. In Bhutan, mountains aren't just geological formations, they're sacred entities revered by Buddhist culture. Because of this, climbing mountains over 6,000 meters is prohibited to preserve the spiritual purity of these peaks. This respect for nature reflects a deep connection between the environment and spiritual life in the country. The climbing ban shows how Bhutan prioritizes environmental conservation and cultural traditions over conventional tourism. While other mountain destinations attract climbers from around the globe, tourism in Bhutan is geared toward activities that respect the sanctity of its natural spaces. Trekking through villages and visiting monasteries are examples of experiences that promote cultural engagement without disrupting the ecological balance. This reverence for the mountains also reinforces Bhutan's sustainability policy. By protecting the sacred peaks from commercial exploitation, the country maintains its carbon-negative status, ensuring the ecological footprint of tourism stays minimal. The approach is clear: value the spiritual and natural above profit, a philosophy that runs through all conservation policies. The respect for mountains extends to the daily lives of the Bhutanese, who see these landscapes as home to protective deities. This belief is reflected in spiritual practices and laws that safeguard the environment. Even traditional architecture blends harmoniously with the scenery, respecting the sacred and the natural in every structure. As Bhutan moves towards the future, the mountains remain guardians of its cultural and spiritual identity, and with this approach the country teaches that sustainable development can indeed coexist with deep respect for beliefs and traditions. This closes the cycle of topics and leads to a complete understanding of how this small kingdom has managed to preserve its essence. Bhutan teaches us that true wealth isn't found in material things but in the way we live and what we value. Now, how about applying these principles to your own life? What can you do to seek more happiness and well-being instead of just chasing numbers? Maybe it's time to rethink your priorities and look at what truly brings meaning to your everyday life. Think about it. How can you make more sustainable choices? What traditions or spiritual practices can you adopt to live a more balanced life? If these questions stirred something in you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more to learn about Bhutan and other ways of living that could change your perspective on the world. Let's explore together what it means to live more consciously and happily.